that Esther, for me, from a living theory perspective, can't be a case. Okay, so what struck me, and I think Fred mentioned this at the beginning, the difficulty of treating anybody in this room, for example, as a case of anything. You know, from a living theory perspective, just simply would not happen, because I was asked just to comment on the case from this perspective of living theory. And in a living theory, the individual creates their own explanation of their influence in their own learning, or the learning of another, or in the learning of the social formation in which the inquiry is taking place. So that is from a living theory perspective. Now, if you look at the case that I was given of Esther, you'll see that it said, as Fred put on the screen at the beginning, that the project had principles of self-study, and I think it came from Gary Hoban's work. Now, in a living theory, you would not apply principles from outside into the generation of your explanation of your practice. This would be a generative process, and it would be based on what Susan Hart and Marianne Dadds call methodological inventiveness. That is, each person in this room has the creative capacity to actually work out what is the appropriate approach for inquiring into their own practice as they try to improve it. And this is what struck me about Esther, that even when she gave up the project, she was still very committed indeed to improving her practice. And right at the end of the case study you've got, you'll see that what Esther says is that I want to continue to focus on improving my practice without the straitjacket of the project. Yeah? Now, this relates to the case that I had, which I know is not the one that you've got, where the facilitators are saying of Esther that she could not cope with the emotion and the tensions of doing self-study. Okay, so the facilitator's judgment was that Esther could not cope with. Yeah? Esther's point was that she actually wanted to focus on improving her practice without the straitjacket of the project. So there is there for me a tension, not from the facilitator's viewpoint and the perspectives that they were working from, but from a living theory perspective. That you would take Esther's desire to improve her practice as the bedrock of what you were doing in the relationship with her, and that you would not impose principles on her, and including the point where you'll see that where Esther starts to get really anxious is where the facilitator is wanting her to develop, in her words, a more precise instrument. Okay, so from a living theory perspective, you're not really interested in the development of precise instruments, because the data that you gather is often not from a precise perspective. For example, we do a lot of videotaping. You look at values. It's only over time and interaction that you can start to build up a justifiable case for what is happening. So the emphasis on precise instruments is not one that you would recognize, I think, in living theory research. Then the other point from a living theory perspective that I think I will be giving a lot of attention to is Esther as a knowledge creator. That if you're generating your own living theory, then the individual practitioner and self-study researcher is creating their own explanation of their influence in learning. Whereas as you read the case study, I think you'll see that the notion of theorizing is definitely from almost an external perspective, that there are theories out there, and that you aren't the theory creator, and that again, these are going to be applied to your own practice. Now, from a living theory perspective, you gain insights from theories. You can actually integrate insights, and we do, from the most advanced social theories of the day, but they're also not the ones that explain your own practice. Only you can actually generate a valid explanation of your own practice. Okay, so in relation to this as a case study, that is not something that we would even relate to in living theory research. You would all be given, it's almost like the desire to enable you to produce your own living theory. So it's not a case of anything. The difference between a case and a living theory is that a case is a bounded system. You know, you actually study somewhere, for example, as a head teacher, and it is a case of a study of a head teacher. In the creation of your living theory, everybody here will be generating your own unique explanation for within your context. And it's actually, when you get to the values you use, I think you'll find that other people can be inspired to draw insights from your own work as you move it forward. But unfortunately, Esther, who was really passionately committed to improving her practice, actually was seen to be unable to cope with the vulnerabilities of the emotion and the tensions of doing self-study research. So we lose, I think, the possibility of gaining Esther's living theory and actually learning from it. Okay, so those are the main points, and I'll just stop there because it's good to give as much as possible time, to the small groups. Okay, thank you.